So they were on Royal Street originally, just for a couple of years in 1909. Then they moved to Barone Street. And Barone Street was the big store in the heyday. That's what most of the older generation would remember. Moved out onto Severn, on up Severn. I don't remember the name of the street, but just a couple of blocks down from our location at 18th Street. Was there up until about 4 years ago, and about 4 years ago, the industry changed, downsized, and moved here. Well, back up. Originally, the main business was developing film. And as the years went on, we began to sell equipment. So we went from Bennett's photo to Bennett's camera, and we started selling a lot of gear. And then video came on the scene, and we became Bennett's camera and video. Video kind of went away with digital cameras. So went back to Bennett's photo, Bennett's camera rather. And then cameras have kind of gone online, and now we're back to Bennett's photo, back to doing what we originally were doing. So the reasoning behind stopping selling cameras was a change in the industry. So when the internet came on real strong, all the manufacturers thought it would be a good idea to sell direct to consumers online, which in and of itself wasn't a bad idea, but what ultimately ended up happening is there was a tax structure at the time where you could buy something on the internet and not pay sales tax. So they were able to buy it online cheaper than they could in a store, which put dealers in a pretty rough spot because, you know, customers would come in and talk to us about cameras and would spend hours educating them, and then they would go buy it directly online and we would get nothing. So that was the first stumbling block, and then after that the manufacturers began to sell online to consumers at the same price that they were selling to dealers because they then had to charge sales tax. That was just the final straw, and I would say 9 out of 10 camera dealers decided at that point that it was obviously it was not profitable, and it just was not a good business model. Most at that time just closed, just no more camera store at all. Fortunately for us, we were in a position where we were doing a lot of processing, and we were able to do that. Some of the other dealers that have been able to continue selling cameras have a huge used camera or camera repair facility, and they're able to make, right, exactly. So I know at least in a probably 3-state area, I'm the only one doing processing on site. I get, there's several dealers that send their film to me to develop, and then I develop it and send it back to them. And then, yeah, so yeah, that's what I'm told. I do, yeah, just like I did 30 years ago, 40 years ago actually, when I was in high school. I mean, you know, with a tank, mixing chemistry by hand. It's, I tell people all the time, if you asked me 40 years ago, or told me 40 years ago that I would be developing black and white film by hand, I would have thought that they had lost their mind. But here I am. Well, actually, at one time we had a black and white film processing machine, but Ilford was the company that we were using. They had the chemistry to run through a film developing machine. They stopped making it just because there's not a lot of people doing it, so there was not enough call, and so they couldn't continue to process it. So I literally had a black and white machine that I had to take apart and throw in a dumpster. That was painful. Yeah. So at that point I had to make a decision as to whether we were going to continue to develop black and white film by hand or not at all. So it's, well, we'll try it. And at that time the film was on a downswing, so we were still, you know.
It's very recently hit.
Right, yeah. So, you know, it was, you know, half a dozen rolls of film a week. You know, so once a week I'd go in a darkroom and, you know, I'd develop a couple of rolls of film, you know, 2 to 10, you know, depending on who was shooting and what. I've been in the industry since 1984. Generally, I'd say probably 20 rolls a week, sometimes less, sometimes more. Yeah, I couldn't even gander a guess at how many hundreds of thousands of rolls of film. I mean, back in the 80s, before there was digital, I mean, it was not uncommon to develop 100, 125 rolls of film a day.
Yeah,
6 days a week.
I mean, how long does it take to put a roll of film through the processor?
30 minutes for processing and about another 30 minutes to 40 minutes for scanning.
Okay.
But back in the day when we had a staff of 25, 28 people, you had 3 or 4 or 5 people working on the front counter taking film in, 4 or 5 people working in the lab doing film processing, developing and scanning, packaging, billing. Fast forward today, there's just 2 of us. So it's hard to get the film out in a timely fashion sometimes. So now, if anything, we've seen an increase.
Okay.
With the increase in enthusiasm for film developing and shooting and things. So for every one guy who wants to do it at home, you've got 2 or 3 more 4 people who are shooting who don't want to do it at home. And the guys that are doing it at home, for black and white, you can get some good results, once you fine-tune your process. For C41, at home is hard to get consistency. You can't, the temperature can't vary more than 1/4 of a degree before you start seeing changes in color. The same thing with your time. You have to be within 10 seconds, 15 seconds at the most, going through that chemistry process before you start seeing density change and color shift. So, for an artistic standpoint, you want to do it at home? Yeah, absolutely. You can get some really kind of crazy looking results. If you're really looking to get a well-exposed, good color balance, image, there's just no substitute for a machine that's going to do it at exactly the same temperature, exactly the same time, every single time, no questions. So price-wise, it's actually cheaper to have it done here than it is to buy the chemistry and do it at home. There's a couple of things we've tried to maintain a price, even through all the pandemic and everything. Our cost went up substantially, and we had to go up $1 per roll, which, we hadn't raised our prices in 15 years. And we've always obviously had price increases throughout the time, but this time it was so drastic, so we went up a little bit. We get orders shipped in to us literally every day. Every day the postman comes in, and I've got a package from New York, which I know there's film labs in New York, Chicago, LA. I know there are film labs in those cities, but a lot of the kids, younger guys that have gone through college here and have had access to us and brought film to us, have now moved back home, wherever that is, and they still know of us, still aware, still like us. They still send film to us, so it's kind of fun. It's Chris is 4th generation Bennett, so his great grandfather originally started the store. It's always been a family business. It's always been customer relationship oriented. I would say out of the customers that come through the front door, at least half of them I know by name, by first name. The other ones, I'll recognize most of them when they tell me their name, or if I see them on the street, say hello. Right, and we used to also do E6, slide film. So at one point I had 3 machines going, getting back to the artist kind of thing. They'll bring a roll of E6 in and have me run it through the C41 process, because you'll get this real solarized, color, artsy looking thing, and it doesn't affect the chemistry at all. So you still get a negative image, but as far as like actually getting the slides that you put in a projector to project, I don't know of anybody that's doing that anymore. We can still develop anything that's C41, so 110, 126, anything. Now, as far as negative carriers and being able to scan it, I can do 35 millimeter and 120. The 110 negative carrier just was, there wasn't enough 110 film for the manufacturers to make a negative carrier. Film is probably about half.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe a little more than half, because it is on the uprise. But you think when you talk about a roll of film being $10, $12, $6 to develop versus a canvas print that's $200, it don't take long to make up the difference, right? Same thing with custom framing and off-the-shelf frames and prints that can be ordered from your phone online. The big thing about digital prints is people shoot so many more pictures today, and the phones have gotten so much better that people are getting some pretty good pictures. and they want to print them.
so
They want to hang them on a wall.
Yeah,
So it's pretty good. And now that they've put 3 different lenses on it, you got telephoto and wide angle. You don't have to crop and use less of the sensor. You can get some pretty good images. So, or even like the phones, you know, it's like take the picture first, then think about it.
Yeah.
You know, whereas with film, you got to really think about it,
Yeah.
then take the picture. So. But it's you know, the film photography is similar to the old classic cars and LPs, you know, records and things. You know, there's something about it that's pretty cool. You know, it's you know, yeah, I can jump in my truck and, you know, drive from here to wherever and not even think twice about it. But I've got a '66 Mustang. I can jump in that, and you know, it's a lot more fun to back out of the driveway in that thing. Yeah, it's all mechanical. You know, you look at the Nikon FM2, fully manual second version. The Nikon FM2 is the model number. The camera is mechanical, like literally, there's no battery. You can take it out, change aperture, shutter speed, everything, all mechanically. No electronics. That's pretty impressive, you know. Hasselblad, same way, all mechanical camera.
So.
I mean, we put negatives from literally from the 1900s. People will come in with these old, you know, 2 1/4 squares or 4x5 negatives, big black and white negatives, and scan them.